Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're going to talk about knife safety. This is sort of a follow-up to a video I posted a few days ago about basics for beginners, and this could actually have been part of that video. I was going to post one day and one the next, but the original copy of this got messed up somehow, so I'm redoing it, and it's just going to have to post when it posts. Okay, so we're going to talk about knife safety. Obviously, this is not for those of you who are well versed and have owned thousands of knives and you know are well acquainted with how to keep yourself safe. That's not the purpose. This video is more for, you can use this to share with friends or neighbors or your wife or your kids or whoever you think needs to be a little more safer on knives. Maybe it's someone just getting into the hobby, or it's someone who is wanting to get into the hobby, that like whatever the case may be. This is more, again, basic stuff for people who are new to knives. All right, so number one knife safety tip: keep your knife sharp. The sharper, the better. And this is something that I feel like I have to talk with people about all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've had people, people have actually said this to me. Kevin, I've got some knives that are really dull. I wonder if you sharpen them for me, but don't make them too sharp because I'm afraid to cut myself. And I'm like, wow. And you sort of have to go, no, the sharper the better. A sharp knife is a safe knife, okay? And that's because when you're using this, if I'm cutting something, one, how well this blade bites into the material that I'm working on makes a big difference in terms of how likely it is to slide off or pop out. Okay, furthermore, the sharper this is, the more gentle and controlled I can be in my cutting. I don't have to, sit here and double fist this thing and jam it down into something. And I can tell you that one of the times I cut myself, and I've cut myself a few times, and by the way, if you're around sharp stuff all the time and you're always using a knife, eventually you will cut yourself. Hopefully, because you're following some of these safety rules, the cut won't be all that bad, okay? So, I was cutting a ham. I don't have enough room to show you here, so let's pretend it's a really small ham. So let's imagine this is the big ham here, and I'm cutting this. All right, and I've got my hand like down here, so I've got quite a bit of room, and I go to cut this, and as I'm kind of pushing down, the skin on the ham is like indenting. Okay, the knife is so dull that I can't break the surface of the ham, and the ham kind of slips, and the knife slips, and the knife just kind of rolled sideways and cut me right on the finger right here. The tip was a little sharper than the rest of the knife, and so I ended up getting cut, mostly because this stupid knife was dull, right? A sharp knife would have just sliced through the ham and it wouldn't have been a problem. So a sharper knife is definitely better. Now, there is one sort of qualifier I have to give to this piece of advice, and that is remind people that knives are sharp, okay? That may seem nuts, but my experience has been that most people assume knives are pretty dull because their knives are dull and they're used to using them in ways that aren't terribly safe, okay? How many times have you seen this thing happen? So someone grabs their knife and they've got a potato or an apple and they start doing this and hitting their thumb against the blade. All right, well, if you do that with a knife at my house, right, you're going to cut yourself, guaranteed. And I've had people, go in the kitchen and go to start cutting up potatoes or helping my wife with dinner, and I have to go, whoa, that knife is sharp, right? If you use that the way you're used to using your knives at home, you're going to cut yourself. So sometimes you have to remind people as well. Number one. Number two, stay away from other people. Keep people out of the cutting path. I don't know whether you call it I've heard people call it like the circle of death or the circle of blood or something like that. And I don't know, we're not practicing witchcraft here. We're just cutting stuff. So the point is, keep other people away from you when you're cutting stuff. It seems really, really obvious, but often it's not as obvious as it should be. And I will give you one example of this. I've talked about this before, but on an emergency scene, right? If I'm when I'm working as a firefighter responding to a medical call, there's almost no chance. Okay, there are very, very select instances where I would ever pull out a knife and use it on a scene, and it's almost never. One, I have a Leatherman Raptor on my belt anyway, so that's going to be my primary cutting tool. But the chances of me cutting another person with this, if I start working closely, using it for cutting their clothes off or cutting a seatbelt or something like that, it gets pretty sketchy. So generally speaking, I am not going to have an open, full-bladed knife around a person. All right, even one of the the Benchmade safety knives with the blunted tip or something like that, it's still not ideal. I'm going to prefer a pair of medical shears or a seatbelt cutter or something like that. All right. Now, I get, guys, in a real survival situation, you've been in an accident, something, that's a different scenario altogether. So number 2, stay away from other people. Make sure no one's within your reach, no one's in the cutting path or, where your knife could go if it kind of breaks out of whatever you're cutting. All right, number 2. Number 3, put your knife away. All right, do not, so I'm breaking a rule right now. So when I'm not holding this knife, I should just put it back in the sheath and put it down. Now it's safe. If someone steps on it, drops it, if I drop it on myself, it's no big deal. I can't cut anything because the sheath is on the knife, okay? Same with folders, right? I'm gonna close the knife when I set it down. Okay, and I'm going to be aware to make sure that, knives are closed most of the time, unless I'm actually using it and I'm under direct control of the knife. Now, again, guys, there could be an exception to this, but it's a rare one. Okay, so if I'm wearing this knife sheath and I've got the knife out and I've done some cutting and my friend says, hey, can I borrow your knife? I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold the blade, I'm going to give them the handle, and I'm going to make sure they've got it before I pass it on to them. But most of the time that's not going to be the case. This knife especially, I can just clip it off my belt like that. So I take it off my belt, I hand it over to someone else. Okay. Let's see. So put your knife away. Make sure, and I guess we could say the same thing about axes, about larger like machetes and stuff like that. If we're going to leave them, make sure we're putting them down or putting them away in such a way that no one can get cut, no one can trip and fall face first onto the axe or something like that. All right. Next, now we're all the way on to number 4. Keep your own body out of the way. All right. So normally, we talk about this in terms of pretend I'm cutting this. They say cut away from yourself. Don't do this kind of thing. Very, very good, true advice. I like to, it's nice if I can stabilize whatever I'm cutting on. So put it down on something. Now I've got a lot of control. Everything is under fine control. Okay. I've seen people, by the way, don't do this. I've seen this in real life. So I saw someone, they were going to cut on a stick and they put the end of the stick on their leg and then start doing this. And I go, yeah. Probably not the best plan. Okay, so don't do that. Keep yourself out of the way of the knife. All right, don't put your knife on a leg or a foot. Make sure if it's a knife that swings, if it's a machete, if it's an axe, right? Think about where that follow through is going to end up. I've seen tons of people miss their cut and come in between their legs. Yikes, so make sure that your body is out of the way, both on the initial cut, but also on wherever your blade's going to go if you miss or if you slip out of the wood you're cutting or something like that. All right. Number 5. These are not really in order of importance, okay? But just assume that knife locks don't work. Okay, so this is a frame lock. When I've got this open, right, I'm going to be cutting stuff like this. What I'm never going to do is start putting pressure back here. All right, don't want to put pressure in this direction. I only want to put pressure in this direction because I'm going to basically treat every knife like it's a slip joint. I'm going to treat every knife like it doesn't really lock. Okay. Obviously, the exception to that is fixed blades. Here's a knife that you can count on to not fold on you. All right, so other than fixed blades, if a knife folds, just assume it's a slip joint. That is, it has no lock on it. It can close at any time because locks do fail. It's not something we want to see happen, but it can happen. So just always assume that that knife is not locked. All right. Don't catch a falling knife. That seems like an obvious one. Although I will say, I'm kind of reminded of the day I saw a biker and his 2 buddies. They came up to an intersection. I was standing waiting to cross, and biker number 1 takes off from the light, does a pop wheelie, goes through the intersection, drops it down. Biker number 2 does a pop wheelie, goes through the intersection, drops it down. Biker number 3, he wasn't quite as good on his bike apparently, or something went wrong. Anyway, he pops a wheelie, the bike starts to wobble, it starts to fall over. Well, he slips around and puts himself under the bike so that it falls on him. And what he's trying to do is protect the paint job and protect the finishes on the bike, right? And I get it, and I can see, if you drop a knife like this, trying to catch it, I definitely can understand the sentiment, and I may even do it myself, okay? But it's definitely a bad idea. All right. While we're thinking about using knives and the different kinds of knives that are out there, use the right tool for the job. Okay, if you know I've got to tell you guys, this goes along with cutting away from yourself as well. But I was working on a construction site. We were renovating a bathroom, and my boss had an Olfa knife. So this is not an Olfa knife, but just pretend, I think you guys know what I'm talking about. One of those construction knives. And he stuck the tip of the knife in under the caulking, and he's running it like this along the floor to cut that caulking and detach the tub from the floor. Well, it's pretty stuck, and he is really flexing it, and he's just pulling that knife back. And I probably don't need to tell you what happened. At some point, the tip broke off, okay, and the rest of the blade went flying back, and he buried that knife in his leg up to like a good 2.5 inches of the knife was just buried right in his leg. So now we've got to stop work. We've got to go to the hospital. It's a big thing. Now, two things. One, he should have been cutting away from himself, and two, the knife was not strong enough to do the job that he was doing with it. And those Olfa knives are pretty notorious for breaking from time to time. So whenever you're using one, just assume that blade could break. It's designed to break. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, when you share a knife, obviously, if you're sharing a folder, close the knife and then share it. If you're sharing a fixed blade, I've already talked about this, but sheath the knife first before you share it. Again, remind people that it's sharp. Most people don't have a sharp knife. So if you're into knives and you're into sharpening, your knife is probably sharper than most people's. If you have to share a knife out of the sheath, obviously you're going to hold the blade. You're going to hand it to them handle first. All right. Let's see here. Oh yes, thinking of sharing a knife. You share a knife like this, okay? Who watching has had this experience? You share a knife like this. This has a compression lock. So in order to close it, you push over on this little tab and the blade closes. Hey, awesome, right? Well, someone says, hey, can I borrow your knife? You hand them this, they open it up, they do their cut, and then they want to close it too because they realized, hey, the way that person handed me that knife was very safe, so I'm going to close it. Well, oh, yeah. And they're going like this, and they're twisting and bending, and they're pulling the blade. Well, their hand's right here. They're pulling the blade closed, and I'm like, whoa, stop, right? And with a compression lock, you're always a little worried that they're going to accidentally hit this and it's going to come closed. Or a back lock, same thing. They squeeze that back lock. So before you hand someone your knife, make sure they know how it works. All right. Finally, share all this stuff with your friends. You don't have to share this video, but you know all this stuff. So when you're around people who are non-knife people, remind them of some of the safety rules, because the more people know and the more comfortable they are around knives, the better it is for the community. The more likely it is that people are not going to be, have the typical sheeple response and freak out when they see a knife. So remind people of the safety rules. Tell them about the knives you're carrying. Tell them how they work. Tell them how sharp they are. Make sure people are comfortable around your knife. And the last thing I would say about this is, whether it's for a knife or for anything else, I highly, highly recommend you get yourself some first aid training and get yourself a good first aid kit. Please, please do that. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.